Hello and welcome on into the Wolverine podcast. It is we're again recording from the past for the future. I can't do math for whatever reason. I think that's 5 days from now, so that would make this May 26th. Another special edition of our podcast today. Anthony Broom here with Clayton Safey. We'll be talking to Brian Boesch, who you will know as the voice of Michigan basketball, also on the broadcast for Michigan football. We'll discuss both. We'll ask him a couple questions about himself as well. Brian is standing by for after we do our housekeeping here. But Clayton, welcome back. Some good feedback from our chat with JD Piquel from On3. So we wanted to run it back, and seeing as Monday is a holiday, we wanted to bring on another guest and do the business here. But welcome back, my friend.
Yeah, happy Memorial Day to everyone out there, and obviously thinking of all the people that came before us to provide this great country for us and where we're at. So happy Memorial Day weekend. Hopefully everyone had a great weekend. This is before Memorial Day, but obviously coming out on Monday. So
to choose your own adventure. If you had a great weekend, we're happy for you. If you didn't, we're very sorry. So when you hear this, whatever scenario fits you is what we'll roll with. Before we get into our chat with Brian, and he is standing by here, we wanted to talk to you guys about ourselves today. We are brought to you by the 2025 Michigan football preview. Pre-orders are live for that now as we speak. If you pre-order before June 16th, you'll get the most savings that you possibly can. So head over to bit.ly/um-show. And again, if you are listening or if you're watching on YouTube, it's in the description below. If you're listening on your favorite podcast app, also in the description for this episode. And also, be sure to use that promo code UM1, which gets you 2 months of access to our site for only $1. And there's even more savings for you on our football preview if you are a member of the Wolverines. So it's a two-step process here. One, sign up using promo code UM1. Go get on our message board on our site for $1 for your first 2 months. And then go pre-order that Michigan football preview because we want you to save as much money as you possibly can. We have bills to pay. I got to put food in my dog's bowl. Clayton's got to finance his rounds of golf, but we do want you to save as much money as you possibly can. So be sure to take advantage of both of those offers today. We will now bring in our good buddy, Brian Boesch. He does work for U of M and Learfield on their broadcast for football and basketball. He's the play-by-play voice of Michigan basketball. Brian, welcome in.
Glad to be here, guys. For a while, our podcast was always just brought to you by John and me. We didn't have any sponsors for a while, so I liked that read. That was good.
Well, getting a professionally appraised ad read feedback is always good. So thank you for that. Welcome on in. It's an interesting time to be really in both of your roles, as a basketball voice and then with the football broadcast. I think our chat today is going to primarily be basketball, given the season we just came off of, covering, maybe looking ahead a little bit to the future. And I'll start with this. Dusty May, obviously, that era gets off to, I think, a better start than any of us could have imagined after he was hired a little over a year ago. And I'll start by asking, without throwing his predecessor under the bus or anything that might get you into trouble, from an operational standpoint, I mean, just how different was it getting your feet wet, working with Dusty May, watching how his program operates?
Well, it's an interesting question, Anthony, because through the first 2, even 3 years of the Juwan Howard era, the program seemed to be in good health, and winning obviously masks a lot of that. And I always went through, the tail end of the Juwan Howard era in saying that the missed opportunity wasn't the last year. It was the year before. That should have been the warning flag of having 2 top 15 picks and an All-American center and not making the NCAA tournament. You have that type of a foundation of a roster anymore, especially when 2 of those 3 players were returners from the previous year, and that puts you in a top 10, top 20 preseason list just with that, with a bunch of other questions around it. So the 8-24 season was probably where that roster deserved to be. The thing I'll say about Juwan before getting into the Dusty May aspect of the question is the job that Juwan Howard took in the late spring of 2019 looked so vastly different from the job that he was let go of in March of 2024. And for so long in college basketball and a lot in college football, the ebbs and flows, the changes to the job, yeah, they existed, but they weren't massive fluctuations one season to the next, or in Juwan's case, 5 seasons to the next. I think Dusty May is someone who, and any coach from now for, until there's some sort of more regulation or organization of college basketball, and I'll believe all that when I see it, you need a coach who is going to be able to be almost like a chameleon where things change. In watching some of those FAU teams, even before he was ever a glimmer in any of our maize and blue eyes, when he was at FAU, which is a cool basketball story. You watch some of those games and you see a fun brand of basketball. You see someone who very clearly can, I think, overcome some of the challenges in a position to recruit at a higher level, see unexpected stars. That was one of the fun preps of the Auburn game. Was I didn't realize he was as close to getting Janai Broom in some of those recruiting classes as he did when he was at FAU. I mean, that's insane compared to who the players he did bring in. So the point about Dusty is that the one word I've used to describe him, I think I've said this to you guys before, is he's intentional. And as you show up on the graphic, that introductory press conference, he said at that intro press conference, we've got to show proof of concept. We have to win year one. And what seemed outlandish then is, I think, a big reason why there's so much optimism around the program moving forward. But I think what makes Dusty unique is that he's not going to rest on his laurels and just say, hey, we're gonna do it like we did 5 years ago. You probably can't do it like you did one season ago, because changes are so significant. They happen so often. So that to me is something, it's not a knock on Juwan. I think Juwan came from a background and from a coaching philosophy where it's the culture and it's the same year in, year out. And you just do what you're used to doing. With Dusty, I think we could hopefully sit here 4 or 5 years from now and say, yeah, the Dusty May that was in that introductory press conference is very different than he is now. But that was because the game and the sport of college basketball changed as much as it did, not trying to force a square peg into a round hole, which I think at times in the tail end of the Juwan Howard era is what happened.
I think a huge difference too, and just something that impresses me about Dusty is that he knows that he doesn't know everything and he's willing to adjust. And you just had on Will Cheddar this week on Defend the Block podcast, which people should go listen to. And he talked about, late in the year, them running these physicality drills and, kind of changing up the way they were practicing to, mask some of their weaknesses or improve on some of those areas. And, he said midway through the year to us in a press conference that, I probably underestimated the physicality of the Big Ten. He's willing to adjust. He may not know everything, but he can figure it out. I think one of the other things that impresses me the most is that he has this kind of unwavering belief in his players. And I would say it's belief and not bravado. He's willing to deal with the brutal facts if they're there. But a guy like Roddy Gale, he sticks with him and then he has the breakout game. They don't make the second weekend of the tournament without him. You just speak to that aspect of the positivity and the confidence that he instills in those players. And even at times it might feel like, why are you still playing this guy? I know the fan base felt that way for some players, but then it kind of ends up paying off down the road.
Yeah, I mean, he shoots players straight. He is willing and able to have some of those tougher conversations with people. And I think back to, I think it was on a radio show he told us during the course of the season when Terry Mills and I had him. It was an on-air conversation, and Dusty's not someone who after games will have these long conversations with the players. In the 37 games plus a couple of public exhibitions that he had. I would say the length of conversation he had with players and the team after the games were well under 5 minutes on average. The one really long one was the Purdue loss on the road, and you can obviously understand why. But a story he recalled was, I forget what coach he said when he was an assistant. They had a bad loss, and the head coach just kept everybody in there yelling, screaming, talking for 45 minutes, almost an hour. And Dusty took that as a lesson of saying, that might have made that coach feel better in the moment because he's blowing off some steam after a tough loss, but it's not really anything that's helping the players. He wants to have those conversations with players after he's been able to sink into the tape, the data, which obviously wasn't as prevalent back then as it is now, so that when he does have a 15, 20-minute conversation with the team before a practice or before a road trip, something like that, he's maximizing what he's saying because it's enforced by studying the film, the data, Ken Palm, analytics, whatever it might be. And I think that has spilled over to the fact where, with Roddy Gale Jr. as an example, his practice numbers were pretty good from the shot. And there's no doubt that if you watched him shoot until that Texas A&M game, you're probably thinking as a fan, how in the world are his numbers good? And then it all breaks through, and it did it at a perfect time. And you can't necessarily draw that up every time. But there was a belief there. There was a belief that Trey Donaldson could handle the basketball late in games. There was a belief in Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden that they could craft one of the most unique 1-2 punches in college basketball. And, to go back late into your point about the, recognizing Dusty did that the toughness of the Big Ten was more impactful than he thought it would be. That to me is maybe the most important aspect of having Vlad Golden. Because of all the players, Dusty trusted every single player on that roster, but he trusted implicitly with 4 years of personal interaction, Vlad Golden. He trusted him on the floor, off the floor, in every shape and form. And the fact that he was there helped alleviate that issue that we're seeing in the roster build for 25-26. He's going above and beyond, right? The big depth for Michigan, with one big name hanging out there still, it's going to be deeper than it was last year, no matter what happens with the Axel. This is a team that said, yeah, we need to be better there. And they've gotten a couple guys that I think, knowing that Vlad would be able to handle it and knowing Vlad as well as Dusty did, it went a long way to set up the ability to kind of wade through that turbulence of not totally having the roster in the offseason needed to contend with the most physical teams in the league.
Mm-hmm. Going back to last year, and I think I might know the answer, but this is spanning your entire career up until and including last season. What's your favorite call or moment in that spot being the voice of Michigan basketball?
Yeah, it's probably the Namari shot, just because it's interesting. I had this conversation with somebody before, maybe it was before the Ohio State game, where let's call a spade a spade. You can wipe away, either positively or negatively, your regular season, your Big Ten championship hopes with a good or a bad NCAA tournament. That's what truly lingers. That's what probably hid some of the warts of what was happening with the Juwan Howard era after year 3, when they still got to the Sweet 16, even though that was a 17-14 regular season, very, very uneven for 5 months. Then you win 2 games. And I remember saying, I was so much more into the race for the Big Ten regular season championship than I had ever been. And it was because it was just so remarkable to go from potentially 3-17 to, for what, 2/3 of the way through the league, they were on pace for 17-3. So I was so into that run compared to, hey, we're trying to make it to the NCAA tournament and make a run and all of that. So after that Michigan State loss, then the football game that was played in Lincoln, Nebraska that Monday, with then the Rutgers shot and who Namari is too. Obviously I'm not going to come on here and say, well, let me tell you all the bad guys I've dealt with at the University of Michigan. And there have been very few. I'm not saying this is some prevalent thing, but it
would do well for our numbers if you did.
Well, yeah, we're content creators, man. Come on.
I'll text your personal numbers later. No, but genuinely, Namari is one of the the best people I've been around. Who he is and who he seems like in those settings where fans get to know him a little bit more. He truly is that. And I mean, what he had to endure. The only person I probably felt worse for last season was Jalen Llewellyn, because he shouldn't have been playing the way that, and this is 2 seasons ago now.
Yep.
Jalen Llewellyn should never have been playing 7 minutes at home games and 37 minutes in road games with his health and circumstance, and it was unfair. But here's Namari, who does every interview, has a smile on his face, works his tail off, finally has this incredible bounce back from injuries. And in his 4th year, this former highly regarded recruit's finally getting a chance to just show what he can do on the floor. And it's with an impossible role on a bad basketball team that no one's noticing. And I talked about it when we had Namari on the podcast a couple weeks back. People's excitement for Namari's return this year is a 1,000 times greater than it was last year. Everyone was excited for the new shiny toys, and I understood why. When you go 8-24, that's the break, right? Like, that's how it goes. So for him to have that shot, and for Michigan to then feel like, okay, somehow they went 2-0 in this week, where they scored 49 points at Nebraska and won, and then seemingly were dead to rights against Rutgers and pulled it out. You're thinking, man, this team of destiny going to win the Big Ten regular season title, and we all know what happened from there. So that for me was absolutely awesome. Truly a just the whole complexion of it was really, really special, because of who he was, how improbable it was, and that was also the real birth of the Terry Mills giggle.
So I was going to bring that up. Did you know that was happening in the moment, or did you have to listen back?
So do you want the 1 minute story, or do you want the genuine 5 minute broadcaster breakdown?
I want the breakdown.
Okay.
Clayton, you can veto that, but I want the breakdown. We got him here.
Let's get it.
Okay, so this is going into the weeds here. But as you guys know, because you cover the team as well as you do, it was a fact of life for the first, really the entire Juwan Howard era, unfortunately. Late in games, they weren't going to make the shot for whatever reason. And there were some good sets like that. There were some open looks, and Michigan just never seemed to hit that. So there were a lot of practice moments for me to understand how Terry might react if and when a big time shot would go down, right? Buzzer beater to force OT, game winner, or whatever. So, and the reason why I knew this, before I was doing the play-by-play, I was hosting in studio and I was producing and cutting the highlights. So I was in studio when the Jordan Poole shot happened. And it is the happiest I've ever heard Terry Mills. He is, it wasn't even a giggle. It was just him giggling with words. He was so happy.
Can I do it real quick?
Sure.
Heartbreak Hotel. Are you kidding me? That was his reaction.
The other, so, and I think it was between the call and that, you just hear this, Matt and Terry, they finish up the initial call. The freshman did it. And then there's this second pause, and you just hear Terry go, "Oh boy!"
I forgot about that part. Yes,
and it is just, it is joy personified, right? So I have all this in the backdrop, and the Hunter Dickinson Wisconsin call happens.
Great call,
and thank you. And there was the pause there, and for me, that was just to reset. And Terry didn't do as much in the way of giggling there. But I learned from that point that he was going to say something. He was going to, who am I to say Terry Mills, national champion, Michigan legend? Hey, let me call the play first. No, I want to hear that on television. If we're doing an unbiased, network thing, yeah, Terry needs to be quiet there. On the Michigan basketball broadcast, he people call me the voice of Michigan basketball. Terry Mills is the voice of Michigan basketball. I get to do the play-by-play with him, but Terry Mills is the pulse. Terry Mills is the person people come to see on the broadcast. Like, he's the voice, right? I just get to be his broadcast partner, work with him. So as I'm kind of going through that and knowing that Hunter Dickinson aspect, I had noticed that Terry, he's doing more of that giggling. It would be more kind of like the little like, but he had started to bring that out. So I was like, okay, if and when there's another one of those shots, I'm just going to let it go. And it gives me a chance to reset, finish the call, all of it, and give Terry the chance. And the cool part was that the video aspect was just added like 2-3 weeks prior.
Wow.
And it had been used a couple times on the television show. But Patrick McLaughlin, he's a legend around here behind the scenes. He's been doing stuff with the program and with the MGO Blue TV for decades now. He said, "Hey, I see you up there. We don't have it recorded, and you and Terry are great. You guys are animated. We're going to throw a camera there." Sure, let's do it. So I honestly had forgotten that was there for that call. For a couple others I had remembered, but I genuinely had forgotten. And just having Terry lean back, and he kind of looked up at me. I just was like, "Here, you do your thing, man. You laugh. This is great." And yeah, so for me, that few seconds, it serves two purposes. It's to allow Terry, if he wants to say something, to say it, and it's not just us screaming over top of each other, because that's not ideal, right? It's welcoming him into the call, me buttoning it up quickly, then Terry getting a chance to show his emotion, and it gives me that 3-4 seconds. If you watch back on the actual video, and actually I had a coworker of mine point this out, and I didn't even think about it, but he was right. I clapped twice in that video clip. The first one was really emphatic, and I actually didn't do it well. And I had a little bit of like a black and blue mark because I didn't actually like execute it properly, which is probably best for the ambiance of the call because it would have been louder. Mm-hmm. And then the second, so that was for the shot and for Namari hitting it. And then a little bit more of a subtle one was a second, and that was, all right, I had a good call. I was happy with the call. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that for me was really cool. But the other one was, the Trey coast to coast was the Terry giggling throughout as well. Yes. And that was more chaos because the game wasn't over. But LJ Kaysen almost high-fived us because he was so far off the bench. And
that was scary. That was really scary.
You should have seen the color leave Clayton Safey's face. He's like, "LJ, get off the floor."
I almost jumped down from the second deck to get him back on the bench.
Kyle Church did the best job of pretending like he was trying to get everybody back, but it just chaos. Like you don't, and
it's March.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, that was right after the, pretty questionable foul. Was it Reuben Jones on Derek Queen, right? Yes. Reuben fouled him. And you're thinking at that point, well, that might have cost the game. Boom, right back, coast to coast, win the game. Absolute wild. But no,
incredible.
The Terry Mills giggle, I'm glad it's gotten the attention that it has. And genuinely, I can't say enough about Terry and how he makes my job easier, not just on the air, but off the air, unlocking doors and making introductions and talking about past experiences and all that. I mean, Terry's not he's not a trained broadcaster since birth, right? Like he went from basketball to coaching to, I don't know if I want to do this, to broadcasting. Are you going to write books about Terry's fundamentals? No, of course not. But in terms of his passion, his ability to be a great teammate, never been with one better. He is as good as it gets.
It's awesome.
That's awesome. I want to roll back to Namari Burnett for a second, just in terms of, when he joined that team that ultimately went 8-24, there was the skepticism of this guy's, he's been banged up his whole career. Like this is your starting two guard now, or your point guard in some situations. And, since then, a guy who's gone on to not only play in every game that he's been at Michigan, but he started every single game. So for him to kind of turn it around and be this kind of a symbol of, he's back for a sixth collegiate season now, be this symbol of, I don't know, consistency, reliability. It has been pretty fun to watch. And, I say that as a springboard into, obviously he's back next year. There's been quite a, not a roster overhaul to to the extent of Dusty's first team because he had to build an entire basketball team. But they've brought in the transfers that they have. Obviously, there's still the one in Yaxel where with out of respect for your employer and his process, I don't know how much you can touch on him, but what do you make of what this roster looks like heading into the summer? And there is obviously maybe another spot or two to fill somewhere, but it looks quite a bit different, but also kind of the bones of what they want to do are still there, it seems like.
Yeah, we can't really get into it too much on a university platform, which is why I appreciated how Mike Boynton Jr. alluded to it and still gave us a really good answer. We all know who we're talking about with Yaxel and all of this, and obviously the decision will be a very important one because you can't just replace what potential he provides. And for me, the biggest takeaway from that is the staff really firmly believes that the roster without that addition can still be a Big Ten championship contending type of a team. We all know, this past season, it really did feel like it was a Big Four. We didn't know it for certain until we went through the NCAA tournament, but the top 4 teams in college basketball, for the top 11 or something in KenPom over the KenPom era, yeah, they were really good. They all went to the Final Four. That's not always how it's going to be the case. So if you do put yourself in a position where you're the 18th best team in KenPom, like around where Michigan was going into the tournament, that could be a team that doesn't make it out of the first weekend or goes to the Final Four. That can happen, and I'm not willing to make any sort of rash judgments on the future of college basketball based on this year with 4-1s, just like I wasn't a couple years ago when it was San Diego State versus FAU in the first game. The reality is somewhere in the middle. So when it comes to Namari, I think something that's maybe forgotten about a little bit that shows just how good of a teammate he is. He played, and I just looked it up to confirm, the Texas A&M game, he played 13 minutes. I don't think he played the last 16 minutes of that game because it just wasn't working, right? And Namari could be one of those really rare players whose minutes per game over 3 seasons descends and his impact on winning ascends. Because I could see him playing fewer minutes a game versus this past season, this coming season, because of the specific role that he, I think, will play, and because of the potential emergence of LJ Kaysen. If Roddy Gale Jr. can get the 3-point percentage to where it was when he was a sophomore, forget the freshman, right? That's probably not going to happen. That was probably it wasn't really a small sample size, but it was a smaller sample size. But if he's shooting 30% from 3, he's going to play probably more and have more of an impact than all of that. We saw the bull case against A&M. So the way Namari fits in is the question about shooting is understandable. And Namari provides that type of upside. Is he going to shoot 50% through game 18 of the year, 17 of the year? No, probably not. But can he be a 40% shooter who maybe can add a little bit beyond the catch and shoot nature that he used so much this past season? Yeah, I think he can. Can he be a savvy 24-year-old veteran who defends at a very high level, who cuts to the basket well, who is dialed in on the scout? Absolutely. If Damari Burnett's your, maybe 5th, 6th best player, you got a heck of a basketball team. And I think that's where he really slots in. In terms of the totality of the roster, Anthony, I'm curious to see what this all looks like, and because of that potential, ceiling unlocking skeleton key that Yaxel is, does that, drastically change it? Of course. I'd be very curious who kind of the go-to person would be without Yaxel coming. I think we all kind of know what it would look like if he's here, because we kind of got a blueprint of it with the Danny Wolf experience. But adding good players, like what makes Namari special is that in a yes Yaxel or no Yaxel world, he's a key piece. And what that role looks like for him is probably similar. A guy like Will Cheddar, it's probably very drastically different. Roddy Gale probably depends on, where his shooting is and where his confidence is. And I hope that March gave him the boost that it should. LJ has as wide of a range as anybody, and I anticipate more of an impact from the incoming freshman class. So it's fascinating, but Namari unquestionably helps the big question area for me, and that's shooting and 3-point shooting, and how he kind of factors into that. I think we have a good idea from this past season.
I think one of the things too about Yaxel would give him that go-to guy, but regardless, bringing in a point guard like Elliot Cadeau, who can create really good shots for other guys, kind of takes some of the burden off of, okay, the Danny Wolf thing has to work, or the Yaxel Lendeborg thing has to work. Teams can't scheme to just take it away like some teams started to do to Michigan last year with Wolf and Golden. Otherwise, what's our offense? So having a true point guard, I think, helps. I think Trey Donaldson would have paired really well with Elliot Cadeau, but he wants to be a lead guard somewhere else. And Dusty May said that they understood that there's a domino effect with some of these additions that you make, and maybe the same thing happened for some guys that they end up getting. It was because of the domino effect at their previous school too. So you benefit from it as well. But looking at Namari Burnett, his usage rate goes down by 2 full percentage points, 1.9. Yet his 2-point shot goes up to 62.7% from 46.9. His 3-point shot goes up to 40%. Like, that role was perfect for him last year. And you're right. Like, you have some certainties on this roster with him. And then you have some real exciting, potential upside. Like LJ Kaysen, it's about what he could be. Roddy Gall, it's about what he could be if the shot's on and he continues what he did. So there's some real upside to this roster with or without Yaxel. But with him, I mean, do you agree with kind of us that, I mean, you got all the dreams in the world. Everything's at your disposal if you get him.
Yeah. And forget what us three say. Mike Boynton Jr. said it, right? He said it without saying it on our podcast last week. That was the piece to try to elevate to go win a national championship. And that does not mean that, they're going to coach any differently if he doesn't come, and they're not going to try to push the envelope and try to compete. Like, sure. Like, yeah, of course. But you have a guy like that who genuinely is on the brink from all accounts, from his own, from reporters, all of it. It's 50-50, right? It's a coin flip. Yeah, I mean, you take the chance. You need to build you can't have everything depend on that. But, I mean, this team, with what we saw of Dusty May and the coaching staff, who's all back, of the talent that they're bringing in, of the fact that they do have some real continuity, right? There could be a lineup next year where all 4 of the returning rotation players are in it. That's not common in college basketball. I don't think there'll be many, right? I don't think there's going to be many of those spots, but that can happen. And I'm glad you brought up Elliot Cadeau, because he was, I think he was the first publicly him to say that he was coming to Michigan of the portal class, if I recall correctly.
Yep.
And, I know a lot of people went to the turnover number, and I get it, right? Like, yeah, Michigan wants to add somebody who turns it over a lot.
Dusty's addicted to turning it over.
I mean, hey, it's.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you're accepting what happened last year, but the difference of Elliott versus what Michigan did last year is that his assist rate is sky high, and I think Dusty and his staff have basically told you, listen, we're good with the turnover if we're getting 2-3 other elite shot opportunities on the other possessions. Elliot Cadeau feels like that type. Now, does he need to bring his turnover rate down? Of course. Yes, he does. Does he need to bring it down to, I think the John Beilein era probably has spoiled Michigan fans a little bit because of just how good it was. When Michigan turned it over in the John Beilein era on those really great teams, right? 13, 14, 17, 18. Like, it was shocking. Like, wait, what happened? There are going to be more turnovers in Dusty May's Michigan tenure than John Beilein's. That's okay. But can you generate the type of shots that, in watching some of his games, North Carolina did? Yeah, I think that's where, on a coaching staff, where the reality is, like, for every Yaxel, a lot of times in the transfer portal, it is, they're pieces, parts who have upside, who have ability, but there's also a reason why they're in the portal and not firmly in a program or off to the NBA. Cadeau has some things to work on, but boy, his upside case it's tantalizing because his 90th percentile and better plays are as good as anybody at the point and maybe in the country.
And I should mention Morrow real quick for upside too, and Morez Johnson. Like, they got a lot of guys that, yeah, we love what they did a year ago at whatever school they were at, but there's some real growth that I think they feel like these guys can make. Go ahead.
Yeah, I trust the staff on those two guys. It's funny because when Michigan played UCLA, that was January 7th, I think it was, and Adai Mara, I wasn't impressed at all. He didn't have a very good game. I don't think he was playing all that well early on in the season. And then you watch a few of those games down the stretch and you're like, who's 15 for you? Like, where'd that dude come from? And obviously we don't know in depth what some of the thought processes or beliefs were down in Boca Raton of what Vlad Golden could be after, say, his first season with FAU is after a second season of college basketball. But I'd be surprised if they didn't have similar belief on how he could ascend. And it's not going to be 30 minutes a game. So I'm really excited about him. And I mean, shoot, the Morez Johnson addition, what an exciting player. What a fun defender. The block he had against Michigan State is one of the most absurd athletic plays I've seen. And obviously it cost him several weeks of play. But he's a go-getter. He is an energizer bunny out there on the floor, and I'm really excited about what that front line can look like for Michigan. It'll be different, but they're I think replacing Vlad and his impact with a few different prototypes, and that's exciting to think about, especially in a Big Ten where you can deal with the grind of 20 games, foul trouble for big men, all of it. The puzzle piece variety Michigan has, I think, is a little bit greater there than what they had this past year.
Yeah, I think with what they've done, they've given themselves options. Obviously, last year it was, hey, if one of Wolf or Golden aren't in the game, you're probably not going to be protecting the rim as well as you were. And there were things that you weren't able to do with those guys off the floor. But it just feels like, and so much of the portal these days too is, we look at the pieces they bring in, right? Oh, this is what Morez Johnson did last year. This is what Adai Mara did last year. This is what Elliot Cadeau did last year. But so much of it is trying to unlock, like finding out what these guys unlock in each other too, what that chemical mixture looks like. I don't think anyone last offseason could have, predicted that the Wolf Golden thing would work out as well as it did. And we saw how ultimately their skill sets would complement each other. I wanted to move into, I don't know how much of a deep dive you've done on the signees, but, pretty good group of freshmen coming in too with Trey McKinney, who's a top, 25 talent in the country, state of Michigan guy. Winters Grady, I think, is also a top 100 guy that could provide some of that shooting upside that, maybe this roster lacks on paper. And obviously Oscar Goodman has been here, was here this winter. So those guys in general, like how much do you know about them, and how do you see them fitting into all this?
Yeah, start with Oscar because he's been around. Impressive young man who really got thrown into the fire in terms of just trying to help on the periphery of that team last year by being part of the scout team, getting his feet wet academically. It was cool watching him spend a lot of time with the academic side. Even when the team was traveling for some of those postseason things. So sharp kid who I think understands now even better the uniqueness of playing college basketball and doing it at Michigan where that academic piece is incredibly important and demanding too. Trey McKinney is I don't think there's any doubt that he's the best prospect as an incoming freshman Michigan's brought in the Dusty May era. I mean, it's probably not even that close in terms of metrics and potential year one impact and all of it. So I think through roster building, that's where you really get the truth for similar. Like I hear this a lot, in the NFL. When do people tell you the truth? Well, they tell you the truth in the NFL draft, right? You learn things. You can listen to press conferences leading up. They ain't going to tell you anything that is definitely true.
We call that truth serum around here.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the concept is, show me with your actions. Now, Dusty May is pretty willing to break down the ins and outs of his thought process. He's not going into scouting reports, but he'll tell you, right? I think there's a belief that Michigan's freshman class can help with the shooting side, and it probably starts with Trey McKinney. Winters Grady's the one I'm really curious about, and his potential role and opportunity might be, in flux a little bit because of obviously not the same role, but just everybody moves down a peg if the Axel does come. And I wonder if there will be as many opportunities for another freshman to make that type of an impact. So, if I'm taking, if it's over under 1.5 true freshmen who, are members of the rotation by mid-season, I'd probably take the over. I don't know who I would pick alongside Trey, but I do think that Winters and Oscar both have opportunities. But I'd be surprised if they were as defined and as well known by, say, the start of Big Ten play as I do think a role for Trey will be. How much? That'll depend on how he acclimates here over the next 4 or 5 months. But pedigree, skill set, size. He has a body that is not an incoming freshman body. He is a big dude who. It does feel like some freshmen are kind of catching up in the weight room this time, once they arrive on campus in June, early July, whenever it is, depending on the year. I don't think it's not going to look like Trey McKinney is catching up because of just how he's built, how he's worked, and the type of player that he is. Does that guarantee anything? No, not necessarily. But I think Trey McKinney will have a significant piece to whatever story this team writes next year.
Mm-hmm. And don't sleep on Ricky Liebert, or however you spell it too. He's coming in.
Hey, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned him. I don't know a ton about him.
Mm-hmm. I'm talking to him tonight. So
that's great. And I'll be really curious to see how this process goes because of what they did with LJ. I mean, could you imagine LJ Kaysen at FAU last year? Like, that was what was going to happen.
Then you got to pay him. If you want him, you got to pay him $2 million in the portal.
You're right. I mean, it is crazy. So if Dusty May and his staff are telling me they've found a 3-star in Florida that they like, yeah, I'll take the chance. That sounds good.
Yeah, totally. As far as the freshmen go, I just wanted to I belabor this point sometimes, but like if Winters Grady can hit 45 threes, like that's I think of why did Kobe Buffkin play 22% of Michigan's minutes as a freshman? I mean, part of it was defense. He was a little skinny. Why did Zach Irvin play 38 as a freshman and make 40? It's because he made 42.5% of his threes, and Kobe Buffkin made 22.2% of his threes. Now, his 8th one was huge to beat Ohio State. But if these guys can hit those outside shots like you spoke to with the shooting, I mean, then you're talking about real contributions without having to, draw things up for them. And it's kind of one of those things that can help you separate. Dusty talked about it last year, like Sam Walters in some of those games. And then it's something they missed maybe. He hits 2 threes against Rutgers, kind of helped them separate. Now, they hit a shot at the buzzer, made it look closer than it was. But, like, they were in so many close games because they couldn't hit some shots. And if these guys can be a part of that effort, I think at the very least, then you got enough talent outside of them to be really good.
Yeah, 2 things on that. One, I think Winters Grady probably has the most of the freshmen has the most direct responsibility to succeed in that will lead to minutes. If he's hitting threes, they're going to find a way to get him on the floor, right? That was kind of the Sam Walters story, where he was making an impact when he was hitting threes and he was not when he wasn't. Not that simple. I get it. But if the coaching staff will be forced to play him if he is hitting threes. And that's a good problem to have. The other aspect is, because of all those close games, there is absolutely a scenario where Michigan is a better team next year and loses a few more games, especially 100%. In Big Ten play. Because, listen, I don't believe that close games are all coin flips. Michigan has a coach and a coaching staff that puts its players in positions to win close games more often than they lose. But, I mean, let's face it, the non-conference is almost certainly going to be more challenging. I don't know how they're going to do the players era setup or how that's all going to work, but Michigan's Thanksgiving tournament is going to be more challenging than it was last year. Obviously, we know about a couple of the non-conference games. So they're going to have a tougher schedule, most likely, in the non-conference. And then obviously in Big Ten play, it evened out, I guess you could say, at the end, just because Michigan lost a couple of home games when they were really going through it. But the close games that Michigan won, it helped to kind of hide some of the issues that that showed up down the stretch, and that they were able to fix with some of those physical practices before the postseason.
Brian, I'm going to pivot to a personal question now. What are some of your non-sports and non-broadcasting hobbies?
So there are not a lot of non-sports hobbies, I will admit. You mentioned off the top that you got to feed the dogs. So we have 2 dogs and 2 cats. My wife is a veterinarian, so that is and I'm actually allergic to dogs and cats. Cats more than dogs. However, I married a vet, so I need to suck it up. And so I pop a couple of Zyrtec every morning, and that
2?
was, oh yeah,
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I don't know if that's I don't know if that's veterinarian or doctor approved, but it was necessary after we got that second cat. But that's definitely a big piece. I love walking our one dog. The other dog we can't really walk too much. Poor girl had to have one of her legs amputated. All good. She's doing great. She can still run around, but long story short, she we've had her actually a year to the day as we're recording this, and she came to us, to my wife's veterinary clinic, at like 17 pounds. Some terrible person just starved this poor dog and nurtured her back. I didn't. I just listened to Katie and what to do. But we were thinking about getting another dog and having 2 and 2, and just, she was a great little dog and super good to humans, even though clearly one or multiple treated her very poorly. She's doing great. She's at her playing weight now of like upper 30s. Did have to have the leg amputated, which we don't know if that was a cause of the hunger stuff or something else, but she still runs around like crazy. Can't really walk her, but she can run and play in the backyard like anything else. So yeah, I've become a big animal fan and friend because of getting to know the veterinary profession. But yeah, that, and we've talked, like, for me, the most relaxing, the time to kind of just unwind during the course of the season is watching NFL on Sundays. So I take advantage of that, whether it's going up to Regents Field or just watching on Red Zone, something like that. So the one thing I hate Sunday college basketball in the fall. I just come on, like, let me have my Sundays. Great story. So, remember the exhibition with Oakland?
I was going to say, you didn't like that? Come on.
No, I hated it. It was terrible. I would have loved it on Friday or any other day. No, I want to watch it. So, Matt Shepard was doing the BTN telecast, and Greg Campy came over. We're right behind the TV. So, Terry and I were catching up with Shep, and I forget who the analyst was. Campy comes over, and I think that was the Lions-Vikings game.
It was.
One, right?
Yep.
And so Campy just kind of asked whoever was listening, "Hey, what's the Lions score?" And somebody told him it was late in the game. And Shep goes, "Well, the real thing is, how's your fantasy team doing?" Well, here, let me backtrack. Somebody said yes. I think at the time the Vikings had just gotten the ball back because David Montgomery fumbled, and they said that. So then Shep says, "Hey, how's your fantasy team doing?" And Campy goes, "Well, if David Montgomery just fumbled, then not well." And then he just walked away and started doing his. He started doing more prep before the game. It was just a great example of Greg Campy, the gem of all of this.
He's great.
Oh man,
it's proof that the NFL is king, right?
100%. Yeah, it is crazy, and it was cool seeing that because. That was a game where I think were the Lions down 3 with 2 minutes to play, something like that. And I forget the exact circumstances, but the Lions got the ball back. And I know that if that were 5 years ago, everybody in that building following along before this 5 o'clock tip-off would have thought, well, woe are the Lions. They're going to lose. And everybody knew in their heart of hearts they were going to go down and do that. And they did. They won that game. If I'm not, was it in overtime? Was it on that last drive? I don't remember.
Last play of regulation. I remember because there was I don't want to out anyone, but there's a colleague of ours who tried to kind of come up and start a conversation. I'm just like, not now. Now is not the time. I will catch up with you in a minute.
Yeah, we were watching in that media room. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Obviously, if you're a sports fan, you love all the overlapping sports, but doing what we do, that is definitely a first world problem of, I having college football playoff games go up against the NFL, that sucks. Like, that's not fun, right? It's not ideal. I'd rather spread it out more. But that's not how it works. And the NFL is, as you guys said, it's king, and you kind of have to blend in the background, which I've said for a while after the whole 2 or 3 seasons worth of COVID scheduling changes. The NBA should have started opening on Christmas every year and just use that as the catalyst for it. I don't know why Major League Baseball plays playoff games, like a full slate of playoff games on a Sunday. It's not. Find a way, figure it out. But I'll get off my soapbox now.
I love it. And speaking of dogs and the NFL, congrats on the dog pound landing.
Yeah.
Just an awesome dude. Shadur Sanders. Just said. No, Mason Graham, though. I'm sure you were pumped about that.
Yeah. For those who don't know, I know it's definitely strange, but I've always thought in football that, here in the Great Lakes, there's a common bond of Lions, Browns, Bills. Now, obviously the Lions and Bills have done some pretty special things lately. But yeah, I genuinely did kind of just stop supporting the Browns for a few years because of the quarterback situation and
the guy after Baker.
Yeah. I couldn't. The way I described it was, for 11 years, I was, watching the Cavs with LeBron James. And when LeBron was on the floor, you're just kind of watching him to be like, all right, can you go make a shot or a block or do something? Like, you're the best player in the world. Like, go do it. That's kind of how you watch football as a fan, especially late in games. And I could not justify to myself, like, yeah, I'm going to watch this quarterback who I know unquestionably is a terrible human being, go and be, try to hope that he does something special. So I feel right at home as a Browns fan, where they don't have a primetime game, and the over under in Vegas is 4.5, and they've got 4 different quarterbacks, and the most likely quarterback to make the roster is the least likely quarterback to start week 1. It's great. But I will say, the Mason Graham pick, I don't know if Mason Graham could have gotten to a better spot, because with Mason's skill set next to Myles Garrett, I think having a guy like Mason is better than having another elite pass rusher next to Myles Garrett. Again, having Myles Garrett's good enough, and frankly, I was a proponent of having the Browns trade him. I was actually kind of hoping that it could be a Browns-Lions type of a thing, because I think there could have been a match there.
Yeah.
Who was the person who said it should be Jahmyr Gibbs and like 3 firsts? Like, yeah, that sounds great.
Mike Tannenbaum. Is that who that was?
Yeah,
that's why you're on TV, buddy.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, throw in the Sun God too. Sure, why not? Yeah, let's go ridiculous here. Could we have Riley Green as well? But no, I really thought that would have behooved the Browns to just bottom out, and maybe they thought they were going to trade down and acquire an extra first, and that was kind of their way to make up for the awful Deshaun Watson trade. But I'm excited, and it's fun to tell. I have a lot of friends in my life who are obviously Cleveland sports fans and Ohio State fans. So, hey, what do you think about the Mason Graham pick? I was like, well, let me send you some great video.
I've got just the thing.
30th. I think this is a great encapsulation of what he's coming to Cleveland with. It's great.
Undefeated in Ohio.
I hate to use this platform, but can I break some? It's not even breaking NFL news, just something I've heard through the grapevine. While we're talking Michigan NFL, I was told by a very reliable source last week that Aiden Hutchinson, who obviously broke his leg last, I think October it was, he golfed and walked 18 at Lakes of Taylor last week. and he was also in a yoga class, I think in either Plymouth or Northville this past week. So he's he's about as good as he can be on May 21st. So I'm excited for him as well.
Just I had a buddy who was right behind him at Lake Forest like a week ago too. So he's golfing a lot. And I heard this week he is absolutely 100% too, Anthony, from somebody who played with his dad. So
that dude is a cyborg on the field. Yeah. He is a genuine dude off. I really hope you always get worried about the injuries where they don't show the replays, right? To bring the Cleveland one and the Nick Chubb one, like that's just such a gut punch. And I felt a lot of the same parallels that to with Aiden. The only difference was it was later in the season with Aiden, and there was no doubt that the Lions were a real contender. This was week 2 with Nick Chubb, but man, I think back to talking about looping it all the way back to the Dusty May introductory press conference. Like you go back and listen to and read some of the quotes from Aiden leading into 2021. Like now we know how it all plays out, but think back to how we all felt when that was happening. Like, yeah, we know you're great, Aiden. We know that you're great. We all knew going into that season how good Aiden Hutchinson was at football. But that to me, the legendary status of Aiden Hutchinson, like I don't think you're allowed to do this, but man, that guy should have gotten all 4 of those rings from 2023 that team did. And again, I don't think that's how it works, and he probably wouldn't have accepted it if he was offered it. But it's amazing. Like those are the true legends of programs that, I mean, it must have for so many in the fan base, let alone outside the fan base, which, you get into that sewage of just thinking about what other fan bases think of your fan. Like that's not productive for anybody. But in the fan base, it was taken with tons of grains of salt, and he backed it up. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So I'm hoping he's 100% because he's as good as it gets.
Last thing for me, and this actually, you bring up some of who this guy is too, John Jansen, who you also work with. You work with 2 national champs, John Jansen on the football side and Terry Mills on the basketball side. But my favorite Jansen story is, and there are a lot of them because Chris tells some too, like the way he'd play hurt, when he was a player and just battled through and didn't give an F. But he gave a speech to the Michigan team before the 2023 Rose Bowl saying, I'm sick and tired of being the guy that, when I walk in a room, we're talking about 97 and, I was part of that last team to do it. I'm obviously paraphrasing here. He said, I don't want to be part of the last team to win a national championship at Michigan anymore. I want you guys to do it. And Drake Nugent, I was reading earlier my story on that from the Rose Bowl, like Drake Nugent, some of the other O-linemen really resonated with them, which makes sense because that's the position John played. But the entire team, kind of took that to heart. Do you have an even better or different or any John Jansen story that the people may like? Because he's obviously a legend and he cares so much, right? He's close to the program and gets to do all these different cool things. But at the end of the day, too, he's rooting them on like crazy, and you can hear that comes through on the broadcast.
So I'll start as I try to think of a story that's good enough for this, but also not going to get John and or me fired. It is. I do hope Michigan fans appreciate that. And this has nothing to do with me or anybody else on the broadcast, but the fact that this university has a national champion on its football and men's basketball broadcasts.
Yeah.
I'm almost positive it's the only broadcast set up in the country like that. And your point about truly John and Terry want their stories to be, oh, that was like this, not, right. Oh, I remember that. Right. And I hope we get there for basketball a second time. For football, obviously it happened and you want it to happen again and again and again. That is genuine. It's not, some people are very protective of their records and their stories and their legacies. No, that's what I appreciate about those two. And the others we've gotten to know from that 89 title team for basketball. who we got to cover in 2023 and the lead up to those guys, the Aiden Hutchinsons, the Josh Rosses, the list goes on and on and on. So what I'll say about John is that, we started that podcast before we had ever met in person. And it was unique because, John had just been brought on as a full-time member of the athletic department, the football program. And it was basically just given to both of us separately from his boss and from my boss. Hey, we're starting a Michigan football podcast. Go. Okay. And I'd worked with John. And I appreciated how seriously he took the project, and we both needed to figure it out. It needed to find its footing, and it needed to grow. And it was originally pitched of like, Brian, you're not on at all. It's just John by himself. And then after 4 or 5 podcasts, like if you go find In the Trenches 3, I'm sure it's terrible and it's nobody's fault. But I think most podcasts, 3rd edition, are probably pretty terrible.
You don't want the 3rd to be very good. Like, then it's not going to grow. Yeah.
100%. A serious story I'll tell you is from, so that was 2018. It was, I think the first podcast came out like July of 2018. I moved to Ann Arbor in October of 2019. So for more than a year, it was literally just me in our studios in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where I hosted, where we still, if you're listening to the broadcast and you hear Rob Joyce, who's our studio host for football and basketball, that's in North Carolina. Like it's a weird thing when you're off this, this unique high of doing a great broadcast after a big Michigan win, and you drive and you're listening to Wake Forest or Duke or North Carolina or NC State on the radio, right? Like that's a weird feeling, but that's, I experienced it. Now Rob is. But if you remember, the 2018 season was week 1 was at Notre Dame. And I just remember talking to, for me in my job, the busiest stretch is getting ready for the first broadcast. So I handle all the traffic, commercials, production, all of that. So you just want to make sure the first broadcast goes smoothly, and then you're kind of oversimplifying by saying copy pasting, but you're kind of copy pasting the revenue side. And so I'm at the office on a Sunday after that game. Was it a night game? Was it a 3:30? I forget.
Night game. Yeah. And
that was the first time that John had to do, and I say had to because it's fun after wins and it's pretty tough after losses, but his first time interviewing Jim Harbaugh post-game was after that game. And that was a weird one where like wasn't a whole lot of big plays. It was a low-scoring game, and that was one where I never really felt like Michigan had a great chance to win, yet they almost won the game.
Yeah.
And then 10 minutes later, here you are, John Jansen, former player who knows that hurt in that locker room more than, anybody else, certainly more than us, more than most people will cover it. And you got to ask Jim Harbaugh, of all people, 3 minutes worth of questions. And he called me up that next day and was just like, oh, that was terrible. It was awful. And I'm like, it was. You know why? Because it had no chance to be good.
Yeah.
It had no chance to be good. I was like, it's incumbent upon you to ask the questions that you think of, but it's not, people aren't excited to hear that post-game radio. People come to us more when Michigan wins, right? Like that's how it goes. Get it. I was like, you can't put lipstick on a pig, and don't, your questions were good. You have no bearing on setting up. You can't tell Jim what to say. Even if you tried to, he wouldn't listen. And Jim was quirky. He was fun to work with. There's some uniqueness to it. But after a loss, interviewing Jim Harbaugh, it doesn't get much more challenging than that. And to do it at Notre Dame after a close loss where you had a chance, at a time again where, there were the questions of, can Michigan win that big game? And it didn't happen. And that's your first experience. So obviously from there, he got a lot of reps at doing wins that season until another absolutely brutal one at the end of the year. But, I appreciated that he cared so much, and he understood it was bad, but it wasn't going to make it any better. You can't. You have to win the game. And I've always appreciated that about him. But no, he is, John is, so back on the broadcast, and I have to look up to make sure I got this. Try this on you guys. Believe there are four Division I schools who have a color as their name, not their nickname, but their name. So we used to do these little known facts on the broadcast when it was Doug and John hosting the Tailgate Show, and I was kind of like the studio host off to the side, which was in the studio for a while. And then when I moved up here, obviously at the big house.
The update desk.
The update desk, yes, which was just, Doug like looking over his shoulder at me. And so I gave this, and do you guys know the four? Can you name the four? This is D1, not FBS, but D1, so 300 whatever. Four schools whose name is a color.
Syracuse?
No, not nickname. The actual name.
The actual name? School. Brown. Red.
I didn't study for this one.
Okay. Was that you quoting the clip, or was that you genuinely saying that? Clay?
No, that's
yes.
Oh,
did you say red?
I said red, but yeah, that was just me.
Because so we got to the end, and again, I one Sienna. That's the tough one. Sienna's the tough one. I'm blanking on the other two, but we were the only one they hadn't gotten was Sienna, and there was just this pause, and John just goes, "Red."
Great minds think alike.
I mean,
oh man,
and he just and so I was like, man, maybe Clayton has actually heard this clip because it was.
I would be like the one guy to remember that.
If anyone had heard it, it would be him.
I know.
I often joke he's like a historian of modern Michigan clips and whatnot. So.
Well, yeah, there was something during our basketball discussion where you, knowing that was it Kobe Buffkin's 8th-3 was the Ohio. How do you know that it was his 8th-3?
Here's how. So I just love like the callback like to something else. And when Mike Tirico's call on Cam Chapman's 3.
Yeah.
Back in 2016, he says, Cam Chapman hits a 3. He's hit 7 all year. And I was doing the same thing when Buffkin hit that shot. He's hit 7 all year because I looked it up at the time.
We'll be at a basketball game and him and I sit next to each other, and some guy that it's not really on the scouting report that he's a shooter will bank in a 3. I'm like, where did that come from? They're like, yeah, that's that's only his 14th career make.
Well, that's
stuff like this happens all the time.
It was amazing. I do love that. Obviously the play, but also the call. Tirico and Michigan wins.
He did the Michigan. He did the Bob Ufer, and he grew up around here. He's from around.
Oh yeah, he lives. He's a wonderful guy. Ann Arbor. Yeah, he. It was such a great call, and obviously super unexpected. But yeah, I'm glad we got back to that because you said it's 8-3, and I'm like, God, that was 3 years ago. And I remember that. I remember that game so fondly because genuinely Hunter Dickinson looked like death.
Oh my God.
I saw him walk in, and obviously there's always there. I used to be this way too. Like some fans just assume no matter his leg fell off. All right, use the other one. Get out there, bud.
Yeah.
And when that was a very tenuous situation from a basketball standpoint. And I'm like, man, I know Hunter. And I know a lot of Michigan fans, especially now, are dunking on Hunter. I love Hunter Dickinson. I think what I appreciate about Hunter is that, a couple things. One, he graduated, which that's not a guarantee, and he did it in 3 years. And two, he genuinely treated. I don't know if I've been around a player at the college level who treats the very low level employees around them better than Hunter. Like genuinely, he got very close with some of the managers around the team. Like I will be a big Hunter fan. I was disappointed that he left. I was bummed that he left. It changes his legacy unquestionably, all of that. Mm-hmm. But I'm pro Hunter Dickinson, and he'll be good on TV. So that'll be fun to watch.
Got the earring on TV.
Yeah. But I don't know why I was down. Maybe I was doing my Juwan interview before the game there. Because normally the radio crew travels day of, because it's just an easy 3-hour drive. We just get up early and go. That was I think a 1:00 game. And I'm down in the locker room and I see him walk off the bus, and I genuinely don't know how he walked from the bus to the locker room. He looked like he was going to collapse. Because I'm thinking, yeah, he'll find a way. Like, season's basically on the line, we're thinking, right? And after I saw him, I'm like, nope, he would be a detriment to Michigan. And then I'm thinking, well, this is going to be a loss.
Yeah. The Devontae Jones game. I mean,
Devontae Jones, T. Will had a couple big threes. Yeah. Kobe Buffkin was strong. And then I think, what's that?
His 8th 3 of the year.
His 8th 3, yeah. Was that his only 3 of that game?
That is one that I luckily have his KenPom page up, so hold on.
I think it was because he didn't play much in that game.
Yeah, 1 for 2 from 3, played 7 minutes. Those 3 points were massive. 1 turnover.
Man.
Yeah, of course, that was a travel with 14-12 to play in the second half.
Well, yeah, you remember that.
Yeah.
My goodness. All right, that Brian, we could talk to you for hours, but I think this is a good place to wrap. You have been.
Can I say something real quick? This is like when we see Brian on the road.
Yes.
And like we just start talking about these random things, and it's awesome. You're one of my favorite guys that we get to see all the time, and dinner with you, Terry Mills, your whole crew there. I mean, Kongursky and all them in Denver after Michigan wins 2 games, and Terry Mills is insisting on buying me drinks. I couldn't believe it. Speaks to how good of a dude he is.
Terry already had us penciled into San Antonio that night. He was ready to roll.
He was ready to stay out too. He's like, if you want to roll, we can roll.
Oh man.
Seriously, you guys do a great job. Always happy to hop on. It's great to chat with you guys here and throughout the course of the football and basketball seasons. And no, keep up the great work. I gotta level my game up if I gotta remember. Namari Burnett's like 13-3 or something next year and shout you out. Challenge accepted, Clayton.
Okay.
All right.
I love it.
Well, like I said, thank you, Brian, for being so generous with your time. We don't usually go this long, but I think it speaks to the quality of the interview and the conversation. So we appreciate that. And we would 1000% love to have you back at some point. And we will. So
anytime, fellas, always appreciate it.
Wonderful. Be sure to like this video, folks. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for more podcasts, interviews. We're really looking at doing more kind of long form conversations like this. So that's coming. Obviously, pre-order your football preview magazines. Use that promo code UM1 for 2 months of access to the site for $1. You're going to save yourself even more money on your pre-order if you do that and get on the fort today. For Clayton Safey, for our guest Brian Boesch, for our producer Megan behind the scenes, I'm Anthony Broom. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll talk to you again soon.